My name is Keith York, and I'm a 35-year-old man. Right now, my life is busy every day, but it's fulfilling in its own way. I enjoy my job, and the time I spend with my family is invaluable. I have a wife and 2 young children, but I never thought I would actually get married. That's because I only finished middle school, and I assumed no woman would ever be interested in me. Women generally prefer men with higher educational backgrounds than their own. It's no surprise that people who graduate from prestigious national or highly competitive universities tend to be popular. After all, those who graduate from such universities are usually highly capable. I wanted to go to university too, but I didn't even make it to high school. I actually like studying, but I had no choice but to start working after middle school. I grew up in a single-mother household, and we were extremely poor. Even with child support benefits, it hardly made a difference. We lived on the edge every single day. My mother also only finished middle school, so she had no qualifications, and her job opportunities were very limited. On top of that, she had weak health, so she often couldn't go to work. She worked as a cleaner, but that job is physically demanding, and she would quickly fall ill. Our meals every day consisted of plain white rice, thin miso soup, and pickles bought from a discount grocery store. Occasionally, we had some meat, but it was always just small scraps. I had never even eaten a steak before, so I used to watch steak on TV while eating my plain white rice. But even rice was rationed. We were only allowed one small bowl per day. Even though it was just the two of us, one small bowl a day was nowhere near enough. As a growing boy, I was constantly hungry and would go to a nearby bakery to get free bread crusts. But when Matthew, the class leader, found out about it, he mocked me relentlessly. He said eating something like that made me worse than an animal at the zoo. "You're seriously eating free bread crusts? That's lower than a zoo animal. Even my dog eats better than you. He gets fresh locally sourced beef and high-end dog food. It costs $80 for just 4 pounds, that's more expensive than regular rice. Yeah, that's some fancy dog food. Your dog sure eats well. But seriously, just leave me alone. What I eat has nothing to do with you, right? It actually does. If there's a poor kid in this class, people from other classes will start saying we all have poverty germs. This isn't just your problem, watch your actions, man." Exactly. If people start calling our whole class too poor because of you, that's messed up. I don't want to be labeled like that. Isaac's right. For the sake of Class 2's reputation, stop doing weird stuff. Isaac, who always stuck to Matthew like a shadow, also joined in, throwing mean comments my way. It wasn't like I wanted to eat bread crusts. I did it because I had no other choice. If I had more money, I would eat more of the foods I want. For example, I would have raw fish, sushi, and the steak. I've always wanted to try things I rarely get to eat. And I wanted snacks too. Sometimes, I would stick my hand under vending machines, hoping to find dropped coins. On lucky days, I'd find a $1 coin, which I secretly used to buy cheap snacks. I knew it was wrong, but as a starving kid, I had no other options. Back then, I didn't even know middle schoolers could get part-time jobs, so that was the only way I could keep from going hungry. I also couldn't afford most of the school supplies I needed. Since we had no money, I wore hand-me-down uniforms from neighbors, and even my gym clothes were second-hand. Both the uniform and gym clothes were so worn out that anyone could tell at a glance how shabby they were. We were allowed to use any type of bag for school, but I couldn't afford the standard student bag that everyone else had. Instead, I used a drawstring bag I had made in my elementary school home economics class. Because of that, I was relentlessly mocked, and people started calling me Patchy as a nickname. To be fair, no middle schooler used a handmade drawstring bag from elementary school. It looked childish and, honestly, pretty lame. But I had no other bag to carry my textbooks and supplies. If I had money, I would have bought everything new. Still, I couldn't blame my mother. She raised me all by herself, and no matter how sick she felt, she still went to work. I wanted to grow up quickly so I could help her. To do that, I needed an education and a well-paying job. My mother always told me, education is the key to escaping poverty. I remember hearing a similar story about a comedian. Kyle, a comedian from a poor background, was a kid who spent more time playing than studying. Watching his biographical drama, I assumed his family couldn't afford to invest in education. But his mother was incredibly passionate about learning and constantly pushed Kyle to study. Kyle didn't like studying, but because his mother was so insistent, he eventually started putting in the effort. He also had an older brother who was an excellent student, and maybe he didn't want to lose to him. In the end, Kyle got into a prestigious private university, but once there, he discovered comedy and ended up dropping out. His mother was furious at first, but as Kyle gradually gained fame, she couldn't hide her happiness. However, making a living as a comedian is tough unless you become a big star. Even after appearing on TV, Kyle still had to work part-time jobs. Then one day, he got a call from his older brother with shocking news: his mother had collapsed from a sudden illness. The same mother who had always nagged him to study. The same mother who had kept his pocket money for him. Kyle never really liked his mother, but she was still his parent, so he rushed to the hospital. Lying weak in bed with an IV, his mother took something out of a drawer and handed it to him. It was a bank book under Kyle's name. To his surprise, it showed a balance of over $100,000. His mother had been saving for him, setting aside money from her part-time job and depositing all the pocket money she had kept. With a smile, she told him, "If I had given it to you earlier, you would have spent it all." She knew she didn't have much time left and wanted him to use that money to support himself. Kyle had always thought his mother was strict and cold, but at that moment, he finally realized how deep her love was and broke down in tears. Watching that story, I thought Kyle's mother had a point. Even though Kyle dropped out of university, the university later awarded him an honorary degree. Even though he didn't complete all his coursework, he contributed to the world as both a comedian and a film director, gaining international recognition. It convinced me that education was necessary to achieve greatness, so despite the struggles, I buried myself in my studies during middle school. But life doesn't always go the way you want. My mother fell ill and started being hospitalized repeatedly. She had no health insurance, so the medical bills were incredibly high. As a middle schooler, I had no idea about financial aid programs like the high-cost medical expense system. I just kept paying the hospital bills from my mother's meager savings. As that continued, I realized I probably wouldn't be able to go to high school. While everyone talked about which high school they wanted to attend, I was left out of the conversation. I wanted to keep studying in high school and eventually go to university. But for someone as poor as me, it was impossible. Around that time, I finally learned that middle schoolers were allowed to do certain types of part-time jobs. So, I started delivering newspapers. I also helped out at a local bakery in exchange for a small tip. Technically, they weren't supposed to hire a middle schooler, but they let me work under the pretense of helping out. Along with my small payment, they also let me take home bread crusts and leftover bread. By then, my mother could no longer prepare my school lunches, so I survived on the bread I brought home. Still, there were different types of bread to savory ones, sweet pastries, so I never really got bored of eating them. I was just grateful to have food, but since I ate bread every single day, I ended up getting a new nickname, Krusty. Yo, still eating bread again? That one looks kinda stale, though. Guess that's what poor folks eat. My family only buys bread from fancy bakeries. You know. We only get freshly baked baguettes and loaves that cost $9 each. But hey, you're rock bottom poor, so I guess you don't have a choice. Ha! For real, Krusty, how do you not get sick of that stuff? You must be seriously lacking nutrients. Is that why you're so scrawny? No muscle at all. Look at me, I've got abs. Bet you never even get to eat real meat. Honestly, that's just sad. Yeah, he probably gets to eat meat, like once a year. And even then, just scraps. I bet he's never had steak in his life. Damn, that's rough. Man, I almost feel bad for you. The truth was, I really had never eaten steak. I hadn't even smelled it before. Even the scraps of meat I had were so rare that I couldn't argue back. I just kept my head down and ate my bread, but my tears made it taste salty. Seeing me cry, Matthew and Isaac took it as an invitation to mock me even more. Why did they hate me so much? What had I ever done to them? Then, high school entrance exam season came. But I didn't take any exams. I had already given up on going to high school. My homeroom teacher said it was a shame, but I had already accepted it as my fate. Instead, I found a place that was willing to hire me. It was the bakery that had been giving me small tips for helping out. They offered me a part-time job, and I was incredibly grateful. The baker's wife knew about my mother's illness and would sometimes pack leftover homemade side dishes for me to take home. I felt truly lucky to be working for such kind-hearted people. While everyone else was in high school, I was working at the bakery every day. Sometimes, I'd see high school students in their uniforms coming in to buy bread in the morning. Seeing them made me feel a little sad. If I had money, I would have been wearing a uniform and going to high school too. But I couldn't burden my mother any further. Now, it was my turn to support her. No matter how painful it felt, I threw myself into my work. Eventually, I left the bakery and started a different job. It's a busy job, but I enjoy my life now. And as fate would have it, I ended up marrying a woman who used to be a customer at the bakery. Now, I'm happily living my life with her and our kids. I really have no complaints. One day, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was an invitation to a middle school reunion. I wasn't particularly excited about it, but I was curious to see how everyone had turned out. What had they become? I was already a 35-year-old dad, so surely everyone else had become middle-aged too. When I arrived at the reunion venue, a large group of men and women were chatting away. Among them, one voice stood out loud and clear. It was Matthew. He looked pretty much the same, still youthful. Maybe he wasn't married yet. Not that it mattered, but single people do tend to look younger. Hey, if it isn't Krusty. Long time no see. How's life? Not bad. What about you, Matthew? I'm doing amazing. I'm about to start my own company. I already quit my old job. See? I was never meant to be one of the used. I was born to be the one in charge. But hey, you're still at the bottom, right? Weren't you working at that tiny, rundown bakery? Man, I could never do that, too embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, he's a middle school graduate. No skills, no real options. That was Isaac, still hanging on to Matthew like always. He hadn't changed at all, still had that same nasty look in his eyes. I was about to ignore them, but then Matthew hit me with another arrogant remark. You know, Krusty, you should really show me some respect. I just got a $50 million investment from a major company. Bow down, man. Then, out of nowhere, he splashed his drink all over me. Laughing obnoxiously, he and his cronies howled in amusement. I was completely soaked. Yeah, Krusty, you better start showing us some respect. Oh, and by the way, Matthew's gonna be the CEO, and I'm gonna be the vice president. Without missing a beat, I responded. Oh, yeah? Well, that deal's off the table now. Huh? What the hell are you talking about? You lost your mind or something? Did he finally snap? That's hilarious. Nah, I'm serious. You guys should start worrying about yourselves instead of laughing. I'm saying you're not getting any investment. Oh, wait. Do I need to spell it out for you? The CEO of that major corporation is me. What? What the hell did you just say? Quit messing around. There's no way in hell you're the CEO of Japan Food Corp. Well, actually, I am. Back when I worked at the bakery, I handled sourcing wheat and eggs. People told me I had a good eye for quality. And I started to find real joy in evaluating food ingredients. So I founded Japan Food Corp, a company dedicated to sourcing the finest ingredients from around the world. No way. You're seriously the CEO of that company? But we were planning to make money in the food industry too. This is insane. You're just a middle school graduate. Just because someone didn't go to high school doesn't mean they can't do anything. If you work hard, there are always people who recognize your efforts. And if you have a vision, you can carve out your own path, even build your own company. Growing up poor, I had an obsession with food, what I wanted to eat and what people considered truly delicious. But becoming a CEO because of that. I studied food relentlessly, what makes something taste good and what people desire. I bought and tested all kinds of food, researched the market, and developed a deep understanding of flavors. That's how Japan Food Corp grew and became successful. Yes, I had become the CEO of a massive corporation. While working at the bakery, I learned how to judge the quality of ingredients. My childhood hunger and fascination with food fueled my desire to learn more, and that passion eventually led me to establish my own company. By the way, my company generates $8,000 million in annual revenue. So a $50 million investment was pocket change. But I had already decided I wasn't going to invest in these guys. Actually, the whole investment deal wasn't even my decision. It was my executive director, Marcus, who arranged it behind my back. Turns out, Marcus had taken bribes from these guys to push the investment through. Once I found out, I planned to shut the whole thing down. I originally had no interest in attending the reunion, but once I learned about the bribery, I decided to go and settle things. By the way, you guys were expecting an investment from Marcus, right? You bribed him, didn't you? You really thought that was okay? Well, we didn't bribe anyone. It was just a business dinner. Oh yeah? Giving someone $30,000 in cash is just a business dinner now? That's a hell of a thing to say. I wouldn't have the guts to claim that. But hey, don't worry, you're definitely going to be punished for it. I'll make sure of it. When I said I would rat them out to the police, Matthew and Isaac turned even paler. They looked as pale as green apples. Then, they begged me, pleading desperately not to call the police. Please, just don't go to the cops. I don't want my life to be over like this. If this gets out, it'll ruin my future. I have a family. I can't let them suffer because of this. So what? I have a family too. If you really cared about yours, you wouldn't have done something so stupid. I bet your wife would be devastated to hear what you've been up to. I'm engaged. I promised my fiancée a future. Please, don't report this. I'm begging you. That's not happening. Some things are just non-negotiable. You crossed the line, and there's no coming back from it. No. What are we supposed to do? Wait, how about this? We'll get on our knees and apologize. That'll make it right, won't it? Please. Oh, so now you're getting on your knees and apologizing? Yeah, we'll do that right here. Please, just let this go. Well, I don't need that. I didn't need their pathetic display. But they threw themselves to the ground, crying and begging anyway. Even so, I had no intention of letting them off the hook. If bowing could fix everything, you wouldn't be in this mess in the first place. My decision is final, I'm not investing in you. And I will report you to the police. So rest easy. You bastard. We bowed to you. Don't get cocky, you used to be a broke, weak loser. Yeah. Don't you dare look down on us. Just give us the investment already. Oh? Are you threatening me now? Well, that makes things even easier. I guess I have no choice but to take legal action. Looks like I'll be heading to the police station after this. Wait, no. Please, stop. Don't do this. You'll ruin our lives. As if they had any right to say that. They were the ones who had ruined my childhood. I had wanted to make good memories in middle school, but because of those guys, all I got was humiliation and misery. Now that they were the ones suffering, I figured it was just karma for everything they did in the past. Life isn't that easy, you reap what you sow. I turned on my heel and walked out of the reunion venue. Then, I headed straight to the police station. I had no sympathy for them anymore. They deserved whatever punishment was coming their way. At the police station, I reported that Matthew and Isaac had bribed Marcus. I also exposed Marcus for eagerly accepting their bribe. How did I know about the bribery? There was a reason. My company's secretary happened to witness the whole thing. Not only that, but she secretly recorded it and sent the video to me. With solid evidence like that, there was no way those three would escape punishment. The footage went like this. Ah, I really appreciate this. No, the pleasure is ours. We never expected to get a $50 million investment. Well, your company is an essential partner for Japan Food Corp, so this amount is nothing. I'm sure Mr. York will approve it afterward. That would be wonderful. Here, please accept this token of our gratitude. What's this? Wait, is this a stack of cash? Yes, exactly. It looks pretty thick. Just between us, there's about $30,000 in there. Oh my, you guys sure are bad. Handing over a bribe like this. Well, we have to maintain a good relationship. This is just part of the game. Please, take this as a gesture of our appreciation, Marcus the Great. Oh, stop it. Flattering me won't get you anything extra. Ha ha. Ha ha. They were laughing like idiots in the hallway, never realizing they were being watched. I couldn't believe how stupid they were to expose themselves like that. Shortly after, Marcus, Matthew, and Isaac were arrested. Matthew's big business plan crumbled before it even started, leaving him with nothing but debt. They had already invested in machinery and equipment, spending a large amount of money on them. It seems they used specialized machines, each costing anywhere from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. They had gone on a reckless spending spree, only to be left with nothing but crushing debt. Technically, bribery laws usually apply to public officials, but in some cases, they also apply to certain private individuals. For example, CEOs and executives of companies can still be charged with bribery offenses. In addition, their actions could also be considered breach of trust, which carries serious penalties. Since Matthew was supposed to become a CEO, he was likely to face a harsh sentence. Not that I cared. Whatever happened to them next was none of my business. They could rot in prison for all I cared. And after that, they could struggle under the weight of their debt and suffer through hell. In the end, it was decided that Matthew and the others would go to prison. Matthew's wife, disgusted, took their child and left, filing for divorce. Isaac's fiancée also dumped him. Clearly, neither of them wanted to be associated with a criminal. If I were in their shoes, I'd have done the same thing. Losing their families, Matthew and Isaac finally realized the gravity of their crimes. They desperately pleaded with their lawyers to save them. But it was too late. Their crimes were too severe, and there was nothing that could be done. With this, everything was finally settled. If I had let things continue unchecked, I might have ended up being held responsible, too. People could have accused me of failing to supervise my own executive, which would have put me in serious trouble. From now on, I want to put more effort into employee education to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. Bribes, whether giving or receiving, bring nothing but trouble. Receiving money without any effort is dangerous. Once someone gets a taste for easy money, they start believing they can make a living off of it. I firmly believe that money should be earned through hard work. I struggled immensely to make money since I only had a middle school education, but looking back, it was a valuable experience. When I started my newspaper delivery job in middle school, waking up early was so hard. I was always exhausted in class, but I forced myself to wake up at 2 or 3 a.m., head to the office, and bike around town delivering newspapers, all for the sake of supporting my mother. At first, helping out at the bakery was also hard because I was carrying heavy things. Especially since the baker's wife was pregnant back then, I carried the heavy items for her so she wouldn't have to. After finishing middle school, I worked part-time at the bakery, watching students in their uniforms head off to school with a sense of frustration. I wanted to go to high school so badly, but we didn't have the money, so I had to give up on that dream. Looking back, maybe things could have worked out if we had applied for welfare assistance. But at the time, I had no knowledge of such things, and no one ever told me about them. So, I simply swallowed my frustration and worked. Still, that experience taught me the true value of money. My wages weren't great, but at least I could see the direct results of my hard work in the form of cash. With my first paycheck from the bakery, I bought my mother strawberries, her favorite fruit. She had always said that fruit was too expensive, but she often reminisced about the taste of strawberries from when she was younger. When I gave them to her, she ate them while tears streamed down her face. She kept thanking me for buying something so luxurious, which made me feel a little embarrassed. I remember that the strawberries were high-end, costing about $10 per pack. I couldn't afford to take her to a fancy restaurant, so this was the least I could do to make her happy. Now, I'm a CEO and have built wealth, but I probably understand the value of money better than anyone. That's why I can't stand bribery. Buying people's trust with money is inherently wrong. Trust isn't something you purchase, it's something you build. I always think about what I can do to make others happy and act accordingly. Trust is built when my actions produce results and help the other person understand my intentions. Since that incident, my company has improved significantly. I committed to organizational reform and implemented strict training for my employees. At first, many of them resisted the idea of undergoing training. But after actually experiencing it, they started to feel more motivated to contribute to the company and society. I brought in top-class instructors to conduct professional etiquette training. Ideally, this kind of training should have been done when they first joined the company, but I had been too busy to prioritize it. I reflected on my own negligence and resolved to be more mindful moving forward. As my employees started working with more enthusiasm, I felt even more motivated to improve the company. It was a win-win situation. I don't demand absolute loyalty from my employees, nor do I expect them to blindly obey. But at the very least, they need to understand the difference between right and wrong. That's why I insisted they undergo this training. Watching the process was enlightening for me as well, and I plan to continue these programs in the future. I believe that when the leader continues to learn, it positively influences the entire team. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to attend high school or university. My formal education stopped at middle school. But I've come to realize that school education isn't everything. What you learn in school is just the foundation for life. The real lessons come from actual experience in society. This training was a perfect example of that. You don't learn this kind of thing in school, so at first, many employees looked nervous. Even I felt a bit anxious just observing from the back of the room. Watching the strict instructors drill discipline into my employees made me break out in a sweat. But since all of this benefits society, I have to endure it. Even training sessions that seem unreasonable at first are actually full of useful lessons. I decided that from now on, I would actively seek out opportunities to learn and absorb as much knowledge as possible. As the CEO, I needed to keep learning so that my employees would also develop a thirst for knowledge. If they acquired new skills, they could apply them to their work, making the company even stronger. For example, in accounting, having a bookkeeping certification would make tasks much more efficient. But not all employees had it, meaning senior staff had to train the newer ones from scratch. So, I thought about how to fix this. That's when I decided to introduce e-learning as part of our company's employee benefits. The company would cover all costs, and if an employee earned a qualification, their salary would increase accordingly. Other companies apparently offer only about $100 in certification allowances. But since I want employees to make the most of their skills for the company, I set it at $500. Since my company was thriving, this was an investment I could afford. As a result, more employees started dedicating themselves to self-improvement. I even allowed them to study during downtime at work if it contributed to the company's success. Many of them obtained new qualifications and became experts in their fields. Productivity increased, and the company became even more dynamic. Of course, sales skyrocketed as well, and now my company's revenue exceeds $10 billion. It took significant investments to get here, but those investments have more than paid off. Spending money on education was never a mistake. Then, I remembered the story of Kyle, the comedian. Kyle's mother insisted that he pursue academics because she believed that education could help him in life. She must have repeatedly told him to study for that reason. As a kid, I wanted to escape poverty through education. I thought if I studied hard and got into a prestigious university, I could land a good job. But what exactly is a good job? What kind of work is considered valuable by society? In the end, I didn't go to high school and started working at a bakery. But even that was an important job. After all, we were feeding people. When I was younger, I believed that getting into a good company meant earning a stable income. But that's not what life is all about. Even if you graduate from a top university and land a high-paying job, you could still lose everything. Just like Matthew did. Following the right path doesn't always guarantee success. What truly matters is constantly learning, improving, and gaining skills. It took me until this age to realize it, but I wish I had known sooner. If I had, I wouldn't have spent my youth drowning in feelings of inferiority. But in a way, those feelings fueled my hunger for success. If I had just wallowed in self-pity instead, I wouldn't have accomplished anything. So maybe feeling inferior isn't always a bad thing. If someone out there is struggling with those emotions, I want them to cherish that feeling. It's painful, and constantly comparing yourself to others isn't healthy. But if you deny your own struggles, you risk denying yourself entirely. It's normal to want to climb higher and gain recognition. So, I want you to think carefully about how to fulfill that desire. And once it's fulfilled, what matters most is how you give back to society. I still have a long way to go, but I have big plans for my next business venture. I'm going to expand the bakery that once helped me into a nationwide chain. Because I want everyone to experience the simple joy of good, affordable bread.